Excellent. Well, good afternoon and welcome. If I haven't had the chance to meet you, my name is Chris. I'm lead pastor here at Hope and Grace. But again, if I haven't had the chance to meet you, please come up and say hello. I would love to have the opportunity to at least get to know your name, maybe a little bit of your story, and just come up afterwards. I'd love to be able to meet you. We've been averaging for the past, 7 weeks, we've been averaging over 25 first-time guests a week. So we have a lot of people who are new to Hope and Grace just recently. And so I don't always get the chance to meet all of you. I'd love the opportunity to do that. Today we are in the middle of this conversation, The Real Jesus. We're looking at the eyewitness account of Jesus' life, specifically his best friend John's eyewitness account of his life, and asking, okay, does that align with how we see or how we've thought about Jesus? Do we actually know who he is? And in just a little bit, I'm going to jump into that. But before we do that, there's a couple things that I want to let you know about. One of which is something that we are going to try. If you have been a part of Hope and Grace for very long, you've heard us use this terminology. We love to try things. So we don't always do, we don't do things because we necessarily know that they're going to work. There's a lot of different times where we're just like, I don't really know. We're not sure if it'll work, but we're try it because we want to help people find their way back to God as best as we possibly can, and we want to get creative in that. So we've done some crazy things before. We had our service in a bar at Willie McBride's for a little while, and then COVID hit, and we built a park over here on the corner and had outdoor. We just love to try things, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, but we always get to learn and figure out, okay, how do we help more? How do we do better at helping people find their way back to God? And this August, we're going to try something new. Since the beginning of Hoboken and Grace, we've had a lot of people who are part of our church family who their native language is Spanish. And they speak English because they're here, part of our church family, but their native language is Spanish. And one of the individuals who's a big part of planting Hoboken and Grace, named John Carlos, he used to talk to me about this because he was from Puerto Rico, and in staff meetings, one of the things that he asked me one day, he said, can I pray in Spanish? I was like, I think you can, but we'll find out. So I was like, no, of course you can. I said, I won't have a clue what you're saying, to the disappointment of my Ecuadorian mother-in-law, but you can absolutely do that. And he began to talk to me about how it's just different. And I've heard so many people over the past 16 years talk about, they're like, it's just a little bit different when I speak to God or when I'm interacting with God in my native language. And so I've always known that. But from the beginning of Hoboken Grace, we've kind of been limited in what we can do because of space, and we just kind of had to put everything into our main focus and what was happening here. People would ask us, hey, what do you think about Spanish small groups, or what do you think about Spanish-speaking services? And we're like, we just don't have the capacity to be able to do that. But the native language thing was always kind of there. At the same time, I also just kind of from a fundamental perspective, if you're part of Hope and Grace very long, we're all about mission. We want to be able to get people on mission and as much as possible and help them be as effective in their mission. And one of the things, too, that we were always a little weary of is I don't know that it's necessarily best to be in a situation where you only interact with people who speak Spanish and you only speak. I don't know that that's necessarily the most effective thing for the mission as a whole. So that was kind of there, too. But as we came into this space, all of that started to change. And our capacity really opened up in terms of what we were able to do. And a lot more people were talking to us about this. And so as we moved through our strategy this past year, we just decided we're going to try something. And at first we were looking at the idea, have you ever been somewhere where they have the translation headphones where you can come in and you check out the headphones and you can listen to it in whatever language you checked out? And we were looking at that, but it was it was going to take a lot of work, and it was kind of expensive, and we're trying to figure out, okay, is it really worth it? And we're in the midst of that conversation, and a friend of mine comes up to me one day, and we were talking about, he said, I know you're looking into all this technology stuff. And he said to me, I know you guys love technology. You just love technology. I was like, we don't love technology that much, but oh yeah. But we're trying to, he's like, but don't you have an entire theater that sits mostly empty during most of the services? I was like, yeah, what's your point? He's like, why don't you just live translate in the theater? And I was like, that seems like something we should have thought of a long time ago, or at least when we first moved into the space, and I'm kind of embarrassed that you're... But so what we've done is we've started trying it. So as a team, we've started trying it, And our team's been looking at, okay, can we do it well enough? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that we're there yet, but we're close. So what we're going to do beginning in August, a couple different things. One is we will have Spanish-speaking small groups going into the fall. So we're going to have a couple of Spanish-speaking small groups. And then also during the second service, so during the 10 o'clock service in Theater 3, which is right across the hallway here, this service will be broadcast in there just like it is every other Sunday, except for the fact that when the speaker is speaking, and it will have a Spanish host and then Spanish-speaking host, and then when the speaker is speaking, it will be live translated into Spanish. So it's really for those individuals, because we have a lot of people who come and they're like, they're learning English or they speak English, but to be able to listen to a whole message and really understand it and, okay, what is God trying to communicate through this? It's really difficult. So we're going to live translate in there. And our team's they're getting better at it. They're getting better at it. I'll be honest with you, they do a lot better job of it when I'm speaking, because Anthony speaks a lot faster than me. And they're like, man, it's a little harder with Anthony. But they're getting better at it. And I share that with you for a couple of reasons. One, for you to know what it is that we're going to try. But two is, I'm betting we have somebody in our church family that knows how to do this. That's my bet. We have over 2,000 people who are actively engaged in Hoboken Grace. I'm betting somebody knows or does this for a living at the UN or something like that. So if you know how to do this, if you're a live translator, we would love to have you join our team to be able to make that happen. We're going to continue. We're going to develop translators, or we're going to try to. Again, we're going to try. I've been telling everyone since we said we're going to try this has a 95% chance of failure. So I don't really think it's going to work, but we're going to try it because we want to help people find their way back to God as best as we can. And as we're on this journey, one of the things that I teach our staff is we are married to the mission. In other words, we are married to helping people find their way back to God. We date methods. In other words, methods or strategies, programs, all that, like we hold very loosely to those things. We're never married to the method. And so I don't know, maybe this strategy will work, maybe it won't. We'll try something else. We'll figure out how to do it as best as we possibly can. But if you're here, I want you to know that we're going to start trying it. So we're beginning on January 18th. We're going to do it for a couple weeks. I don't know if we'll do it forever from January 18th. We may do it for a couple weeks, learn some things, figure out we got to tweak some things, and then go from there. But also I want for you to know that one, it's starting. Two, that you can be a part of it. So if you're here and you'd like to be a part of that, just on your check-in form, just write, I'd love to be part of the development of that Spanish-speaking service. And then also the other thing is, and I know Anthony talked about it on the video, but this is one of the really significant reasons why it's important that we're giving. And you guys hear us talk about giving, talk about the mission and how it impacts all these different things. But when we collectively give together, when we follow God as it pertains to our tithing and just bring back to him the first 10% of what he's given to us, it makes these things possible. It makes us be able to step in and like, okay, here's an opportunity we never thought of before where we can impact people and people can come to know Christ that we never really thought we would do, and we can jump on those opportunities. And that's a big part of what has allowed us to be able to impact so many lives here at Hoboken Grace. And so I just want to encourage you, if you haven't taken that step yet, to take that step, not just to be excited about what's happening with this, but to give to it as well. So that's happening. We're going to try it. We'll see together. We'll have a lot of fun with this and figure out, let's see what God's going to do and how God's going to work. The second thing that I want to let you know about is, the second thing is our teen area has been growing, has been continuing to grow, and that's both Vibe, which is our teen worship experience on Thursday nights. Unbelievable. If you're not part of it, you need to be part of it. Well, if you're a teen, if you're older than that, you can't come. But also our pod has been, the pod has been gaining traction. That's our free teen workout. We have free teen workout classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday here at Hoboken Grace. They have hangout time before and after. And so they're continuing to grow. And then also our space downstairs has been getting better and better. So they've got ping pong tables down there for the kids to come in. They want to be a place where they can belong. That's what we want, to be a place where they can belong and connect. And they got ping pong tables, foosball table down there. But the other day they came to me and said, we want to be able to install 2 video game areas. So we're going to install like 2 TVs in this. And I was like, man, that is a great idea. So they said, well, we're going to buy 2 Xbox Series X's. And I was like, no, we're not. No, we're not. I said, no, we're not, because we also want to be good stewards. But the other reason why I said that is I promise you, I said, guys, you don't need to buy them. I promise you there are at least 2 of them sitting underneath TVs in our church family that have not been used for over a year. I promise you that they're out there. So if you have one of those and it has not been used in a year and you realize, I'm never going to use this thing, we would love for you to donate it, for us to be able to build that out. There's just no reason. Also, if wives, if your husband's away on business this week, you can just bring it in. Just bring it in. Or husbands, if you would like to improve your marriage, you can bring it in. It's good. But yeah, we want to be good stewards. I guarantee it. I guarantee we'll be able to find that. So I want to let you know about that. Last thing I want to let you know about is if you have not registered, if you're here, you're married, you have not registered for the marriage retreat, you really need to pray about that. Look at that. It's on the app. It's coming up in the fall. We're going to go away to this beautiful place. I'm really excited about what we're going to be walking through. And just looking at, okay, how do we improve our communication? How do we understand one another better? Specifically, what we're going to be walking through is how do we understand one another better so that we can love one another better. And it really doesn't, with what we're walking through over the course of those 2 days, I don't think it really matters even really where your marriage is. It's going to be able to help all of us grow as we move through that together. So check that out. We'd love for you to be a part of that with us. So those are my announcements for today. Let's jump into the conversation. As I said, we're moving through the real Jesus, looking at, okay, do these things align? And we've come today to chapter 14. Now, if you were with us last week, you know that it's shifted because now we've reached this last couple moments before Jesus gives his life. And we saw him at the table with his disciples and the back and forth that happened last week. And then today that continues, that conversation continues. And you see one of the final times where Jesus is really teaching his disciples. So we're going to jump into chapter 14, beginning in verse 1. And it says this, is, do not let your hearts be troubled, which is very difficult because he just told them that he's dying. He says, listen, I'm dying. He's been trying to explain to them, I'm going to be betrayed. This is going to go bad. And then he says, but don't worry. Don't let your hearts be troubled. I don't know how you could live that out, but this is his. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. So he's in the midst of this conversation and he says, these things are going to happen. It's going to get a little crazy. He says, but don't let your heart be troubled. And then he starts to talk to them about something that, to be honest, I don't know that I talk about enough here at Hoboken Grace. I think it's far more significant than we realize. So he starts to talk to them about eternity. And he said, these crazy things are going to happen, and I'm not going to be here, but I want you to know I'm not abandoning you. He says, I'm actually preparing something for you. He says, I'm going to prepare something for you. And he begins to talk to them about this reality of eternity and this reality that they are eternal. There's more to this story than just this. And a big part of why he's saying, don't let your heart be troubled, is because there's more to it than just this. And one of the reasons why Jesus was able to so willingly lay down his life is because he understood, I'm eternal. There's more to it than just this. And I think this is really significant because this is something that all of us struggle with. This is something that very few of us even, I should say, this is something that all of us miss the mark on, and only really a few of us struggle with, because I don't think that many of us really struggle to try to understand this. Most of us live our lives like this is all there is. I get 60, 80, 90 years, and I have to make the most of that. Very, very, very few of us really even struggle to try to think eternally. To engage life with an eternal perspective. And I think part of that is that it's so hard for us to do because you see what you see, and it's hard to get past what you see to be able to realize, wait, there's far more to this than just this moment. There's far more to this than just, I last a lot longer than 60 or 80 years. And in comparison to the whole, This is it's literally just a moment. It's nothing. Like if you actually take the time to even think through for a short time how it compares, there's really no comparison. That 60 or 80 years, it's nothing compared to eternity. And Jesus is pulling their mindset out of what is temporary and what they can see, because they're going to move through this and Jesus is going to die and all this is going to happen and the temporary is going to look really bad. He said, if you keep that perspective, you're going to have a hard time with it, what's about to happen. But don't worry, there's so much more to this. And I'm not abandoning you. I'm preparing something for you. But I want to sit with this a little bit, because I don't know that very many of us have that eternal mindset. There's so much more to it. And when you don't have that eternal mindset, you get locked into, I've got to make the most of this 60 years. And that shows up in all sorts of ways. It shows up in our accumulation. Like, I have to enjoy this, and I want to make sure that I enjoy my life, so I have to have that and have that and have that and have that. And we accumulate things because we think this is all there is, and we're living for this. Or maybe it's our story. I have to be significant, so I have to get the promotions, and look at me and all of. But in eternity, none of that's going to matter. None of that's going to matter. Jesus says, don't get all worried about this. There's more to this story. This is just a moment. It's just a moment. And I think we have to challenge ourselves to think beyond that. Because, and I say this to my boys all the time, because they love school. No, they don't love school. They don't love school at all. But I say this to them. I say, listen, you're not going to be in school forever. You're not going to be in school. They feel like they're going to be in school forever. Like, I'm going to be in school forever. I'm like, no, you're not going to be in school forever, because I don't have enough money to pay for that. So you're not going to be in school forever. I said, but how you engage this moment will impact you forever. Like you're not going to be in school forever, but how you engage school, it will impact the rest of your life. And the reality is that this is just a moment in our eternity. You're not going to be in this forever. This is not going to be our story forever. This is not going to be our experience forever. As a matter of fact, it's got a time stamp on it. Maybe you make it to 100. It's not going to be your story forever. It's just a moment, but it will impact you forever. This is why Jesus says and this is often misquoted, because people will frequently say to me, oh, those who are first will be last, and those who are last will be first. It's not actually what he says. He says many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. You can be last and live your life for this moment, and you still have nothing to show. You can be phenomenally blessed in this life, but live your life for eternity, and you're going to have a lot to show for it. He says many who are first will be last. What is he talking about? He's talking about, listen, if you live for just this moment, that's all you're going to have is that moment. There's nothing to show for it afterwards. I remember I was part of planting a church with my dad before this called Skyline, and at the end, when I was leaving there to come plant Hoboken Grace, I sat with a group of the leaders, and they were just asking me questions, and one of them asked me a great question. She said, what's your greatest regret? And I knew my answer immediately. And I looked at him and I said, everything I did here at Skyline for my own glory. Because it's worthless in eternity. And I could have done it for his glory, and it would have mattered for eternity. But in those moments where I got sucked into my story that's what I regret the most. Because we're not going to be in it forever, but it will impact our forever. And Jesus is calling them to this eternal mindset. And I think it challenges us. It also should be incredibly encouraging to you. Growing up, this was an incredible encouragement to me. It was something that my mom talked to me about all the time, because some of you are here and you're in difficult situations and you feel like it's never going to end. When I was about 3 years old, my mom was diagnosed with severe arthritis. They don't really know what it is, rheumatoid. She's about 17 years older than me. She's had most of her joints already replaced. She has no cartilage in her body whatsoever. So her hands are like this. Every time she moves, her bones just rub against the bone. There's no cartilage. And I remember when I was younger, I used to have to go get my younger sister out of bed and bring her to my mom because she couldn't get out of bed most days of the week. And she would tell me, because I'd get so upset about her situation, and she would always remind me over and over again. She'd be like, this is just a moment. This will end one day. This will end one day. It's just a moment. And we have a Father who's told us that he's preparing something for us and that he's going to restore us. She's like, this is just a moment. And I want to encourage you, because some of you are in that right now. And you're like, man, it's never going to, I'm never going to. No, that's a lie. It will end. It will end. The pain will end. And everything that he is about to do is to make it possible for you to be able to experience an eternity that's very different than this moment. But we have to maintain that. We have to maintain that perspective. Let me just ask you this question. What would change about your week this week, just this upcoming week? Let's just start there. What would change about this upcoming week for you if you were to actually believe that you're eternal? That this is just a moment. What is it that causes you to get captured in this moment and think this is all there is? It's interesting, different things appeal to different ones of us. For me, it's travel. It's like, man, I want to be able to see the world. I want to be able to go, and but it's funny when I get sucked into that, because I remind myself, wait, I have all of eternity to explore the world. I don't know if you know this or not, but Scripture says we get the world back, but restored, even better. I get all of eternity to be able to explore the world. And there's nothing wrong with travel. Don't get me wrong. My friend, even last night, he texted me, and he's in Ephesus. And I was like, man, that's incredible. I'd love to be able to be in Ephesus where Paul wrote this letter to. And I'd love to be able to. There's nothing wrong with that unless it becomes the mission of your life. Unless it's like, well, I have to do all that I can. If travel is fueling your mission, that's great. When travel becomes the mission, that's bad. If success is fueling your mission, that's great. When success becomes the mission, it's bad. Because we realize, no. It's just a moment. And Jesus is calling them to this eternal perspective. And then he says something that's so important. We're going to talk about this a little bit more as we go through it. He says, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. What is the point of this? What are you preparing this for? What is the point of what it is that you're doing? He says, I want you where I am. I want you where I am. That's why I'm doing this. Not only are you eternal, but I want you where I am. And you see this heart, his passion, really the purpose of the whole thing. And then the other thing that I want to point out about this is this. When you come to this passage, don't miss what happened right before it. Because right before he talks about don't let your hearts be troubled, do you know what happens the verse before we get into chapter 14? The verse before, he's talking to Peter, and he's telling Peter these things are going to happen, and Peter's arguing with Jesus, no, they're not going to happen. And Peter's saying, I'm going to keep them from happening. I'd give my life for you. And Jesus says this to him. This is the verse before you get to chapter 14. Then Jesus answered, will you really lay down your life for me? I tell you the truth, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. So right before he goes into, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to build this place for you, he says, Peter, before we go any further, let me just clarify this. You're going to blow it. You're going to blow it in a massive way. As a matter of fact, for the next 2,000 years, people are going to be talking about how bad you blew it. When it comes to the greatest holiday of the Christian calendar, they're going to remind people every time they celebrate it how you blew it. As a matter of fact, it's going to be difficult for Christians to even think of the word deny without thinking Peter. That's how bad you're going to blow it, Peter. But don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. What I love about this is it just reinforces again, this is not about performance. Peter, you're going to blow it. And I've still got you. You're going to mess this up so bad. So bad. But I want you with me. You can't comprehend how bad. Not just once, 3 times. But I love you. Don't miss that. I know some of you are here and never heard this before. The message of Jesus is not a message of performance. It's not get it right and then you can be accepted. That is so far from the message. The message of Jesus is once again reflected right here, where he's saying, Peter, you can't do it, but I can. He says, I'm going to take you. I want for you to be with me. Then he says, you know the way to the place where I am going. And then our friend Thomas speaks up. Great to hear from you, Thomas. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? It's great to hear from Eeyore again. Jesus is going to this whole beautiful thing. I'm preparing this place for you. He says, you know the way there. And Thomas is like, I don't even know where you're going. So I can't, how am I going to find it? Well, I'm never going to be able to find it. Totally missing the point. Jesus answered, and this is one of the most famous quotes of Jesus. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Thomas is like, I don't know how to get there. Jesus is like, yes, you do. It's me. It's me. I just said, trust me. Like I just said it, Thomas. Like, and then he says, I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And this is one of those passages that sometimes I interact with people and they struggle with, because they'll say, I don't know if I'm really comfortable with this. You know, Jesus is the only way thing. Listen to me. In this moment, Jesus isn't being arrogant. Jesus isn't stating and saying, hey, listen, you know what? I really want to be the... No, he's just stating a reality. This is a statement of reality. And people will say to me, I don't know, I feel like maybe there should be another way. And I'm like, yeah, if you can find another perfect person to die for you, that's good. Like, but that's not going to happen. Like, no one else is... It's literally... This isn't a... It's a statement of reality. It had to be paid for. There is only one way that it can happen. It had to be. Forgiveness is not possible without the payment for what it is that we've done. Grace is not overlooking sin. It's paying for it. And so Jesus is saying, listen, this is the only way it's possible. There's only one chance. There's only one hope for you to actually be reunited with the Father, for you to actually have that relationship restored. And that's me and what it is that he's about to do. Now, I want to reiterate this again because I know some of you are seeking and trying to figure this whole Jesus thing out. You don't earn this. This is available. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done. The only thing that will keep you from what Jesus has done for you is you. And you can make the choice to say, no, I want to pay for it myself. God gives you that option. You don't actually want to take it, but he gives you that option. Or you can trust him that what he's about to do as we continue to move through this, that he did for you. And then he says, Jesus says something that, again, is so encouraging. He says, if you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. I love this because it's a shift from the beginning of John. At the beginning of John, he says, I've come so that you can know him. Now he says, you do know him. He says, from now on, you do know him and have seen him. I love this because it takes all the question out. It takes all the what ifs out. And you say, well, I read Jesus' story, but what is the Father actually like? Jesus says, you get to be adopted in this family, but what is my dad actually like? Jesus says, wait, have you missed it? The whole time I've only been trying to show you one thing. This is what he's like. There's no question. You don't have to question what your Father's doing when you're grieving. We saw it. You don't have to question how your Father engages different situations. We've seen it. He says, no, you've seen him. There's no more question. And man, one of the things that drives me crazy is there's this idea, and people will talk about God this way, like God's mystical, and God, he's kind of, he wants to be a mystery. That's not what Jesus says. It's not at all what Jesus says. Jesus says God wants to be known. He says, no, you've seen him. Then our buddy Philip speaks up. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father. That will be enough for us. It's just so true of the human condition, isn't it? Like, just one more. We just need one more thing. Just one more thing. Wait, then you're going to believe him? Philip's seen him raise someone from the dead. He's seen him heal countless numbers of people. Think about what he's seen. Think about what he's heard Jesus teach. And now Jesus is telling him about this one incredible thing that he's going to do for him. And Philip's like, I'm still not sure. One more thing. Just show us the Father. Jesus answered, do you know me, Philip? Even after I've been among you such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me? The words that I say to you are not just my own. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe on the evidence of the miracles themselves. It's like, Philip, you've seen enough. Come on, man. I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. He will do even greater things than these because I am going to the Father. And then he begins to unpack something else. He says, Philip, come on. He gives us this incredible assurance. You don't have to wonder who the Father is. You don't have to wonder how your dad feels about you. Jesus showed us. There's no more question, no more wondering, no more mystery. No, he showed us. And then he says, and there's something else that I'm going to do because we're going to take this is going to get even bigger than what it already is. You're going to do even greater things than what you've even seen happening because I am going to the Father. And he begins to unpack this reality that he's going to have to leave in order for him to send to us what it is that he's going to pray for in just a moment. But he's going to say something else first. Let me get to it because I know some of you struggled with it as you're reading through the book of John. He says, and I will do whatever you ask in my name so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask for anything in my name and I will do it. Now, some of you came to that passage and you're like, wait, what? I get to ask for anything? And so you tried it. Maybe you were reading through it with us this week. You tried it. You didn't get your Lamborghini. You're like, I think he's lying. It didn't work out. This was actually a passage that I struggled with for a long time. It wasn't until I read a book called The Papa Prayer. If you really want to dive into this, The Papa Prayer by Larry Crabb, the best explanation of this passage in particular. And it just walks through relational prayer, and it talks about what Jesus is going to talk about a little bit later as he's interacting with his disciples. It talks about abiding in God and this idea that Jesus is inviting you into this relationship, because remember before this, he's talking about the Father's in me, and he's talking about this idea of abiding in him. And then when you're abiding in him and when you're in sync with him and his mission and what he's doing in the world and his will in the world, he's like, Jesus is saying you're going to be blown away by what it is that you ask for and you see me do. But if you really want to break that down, we don't have time to be able to do it today because I'm already over and they're going to yell at me. But if you have time, that book is phenomenal. But then he continues, he says, if you love me, and then he begins to talk about what he's going to pray for them, what he's going to ask for them for. He says, if you love me, you obey what I command, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another counselor to be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him because it neither sees him nor knows him, but you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you. And he talks to us, and he begins to share with them the most amazing gift that he's going to give to us. He says, I have to go away. Why? Because I'm going to ask the Father to send his Spirit to be with you always. And this unbelievable truth that when you step into a relationship with God, when you trust Jesus, that he gave his life for you, that he gives you his Spirit, and he is with you always. There's not a moment you're alone. This is why Jesus says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Why? Because his Spirit is always with us. He says, guys, there's a lot of things that are coming, and it's going to get crazy. But this is just a moment, and there's so much more going on here. And as he's talking through all of it, don't miss this, because he said it. What did he say the purpose was of him going and preparing a place? I want you with me. Now he says, I have to go away. Why? Because I'm going to ask the Father to send the counselor. Why? What is the purpose of sending the counselor? To be with you. What's the point? What are we doing? What are the next few days as Jesus gives his life? What is it all about? I want you with me. I want you with me forever. Do you believe that? Do you believe that God feels that way about you? Does God want to be with you? If you were to think back about your past week, how much of the week did you believe that God wanted to be with you? You're like, maybe 15 minutes last Sunday. Definitely not after you blew it on Tuesday. Peter says, no, Jesus, I'm going to rescue you. And Jesus says, no. You're going to blow it. But everything I'm doing from this point forward is about this. I want you with me. You want to know how your dad feels about you? He wants you with him. For all of eternity, he wants you with him. That's how you're loved. And he's about to give everything to make it happen. Will you trust him? That he wants you with him. And that he did what was necessary to make that possible. For some of you, you need to trust him for the first time. For others of you, you need to remind yourself of it because you've forgotten. And as the band comes back up and as we move through this last song, I just want you to sit in that. Just to marvel at the God who is holy, above all, wants you to be with him. To marvel at the lengths that he went to make that possible. and for you to embrace his love. Will you pray with me? Father, we strive so much to be wanted. We spend our lives chasing it, to be wanted, to be valued. And you've stepped into our life, and you've valued us and pursued us. You've wanted us more than we ever could have dreamed. Father, I pray for every single person here watching online. I pray that they would just be overwhelmed by that reality. In Jesus' name, amen.